Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Howdy, hey.
It's news for the week of June 16th, 2025. We got quite a lot to talk about, but first, I went camping this weekend, just for one night.
How hot was it?
It was very hot. Yes, we had a heat wave warning. It was pretty bad, but we made it through. I think the most interesting thing that happened to us is there was a storm moving through the region, and we were super lucky because it was right above us. Like literally, we're on this huge lake, and the storm is like up north of us on the top end of the lake because it's so huge. And we were on the south side, and so we just got a little taste of it. But literally, I was lying awake at like 3 a.m., and I'm hearing this like freight train coming, and I'm getting freaked out because Cassie has told me before a tornado sounds like a freight train when it comes by. I was like, what is that sound? And it like moves through the campground and the wind picks up and everything, and I'm like freaking out. Well, it turns out I think it was just like a squall, so it was just part of the storm front moving past us because I was on the radar. I was looking at the radar. There was nothing nearby. It was not raining. There was no hail, no nothing. So I knew it wasn't a tornado, but it was still, it freaked me out. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
It's like you've got this like, 3 millimeter piece of plastic between you and nature, that's protecting you. So you get a little bit more freaked out at night, I feel like, when you're camping.
Yeah, you're like, well, is this, the other one is like you hear like rustling in the woods. You're like,
yes,
there's a critter out there.
Yep.
I have no idea what it is. It could be a bear.
Yep, could be. But luckily we were at a campground. We were at the state park, so there was a lot of people nearby. Other than that, we threw a surprise party for a friend who turned 40. They were kept in the dark the entire time. They were totally surprised when they walked into our house, but we had like 17 people over. So that was a lot of fun. And then, of course, because it's continuing to be summer break, we went to a water park, and I've been working on Keep Track of My Games as I work on this course, a little bit, but mostly I've been working on Keep Track of My Games, trying to ship my next feature. So getting excited about that.
Nice.
How about you?
Yeah. Well, I am currently extremely overcaffeinated. Like I maybe overcorrected from my tiredness this morning and consumed too much caffeine. So I'm seeing the future right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I did a ton of yard work this weekend, and I was just drenched in sweat because it was so hot. Just so much yard work. I hate yard work. It is my least favorite type of work, is the work in the yard. But when it starts to look like Jurassic Park, we need to make sure that there's no velociraptors in the tall grass.
Yeah, that's my backyard right now.
Yeah. So I also have been taking a brief break from running, which is kind of messing with me a little bit. I get kind of antsy if I don't run, but I have some like stress, like injuries. I have shin splints right now on my left leg, and I tried 4 days. That wasn't enough. So I did another 4 days here. We're going to try running maybe today, maybe tomorrow, but I had a really painful 5-mile run the other day. Yeah, we just got to wait. Otherwise, I risk destroying my shins.
Yeah, that's no good. You don't want that.
Yeah. I've made a ton of progress on my super secret project to run JavaScript, TypeScript games on the Nintendo Switch.
Well, it's not so secret anymore.
No, it's so secret that I tell everyone about it.
Nice.
I've made a lot of progress over this weekend, so I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Cool. So you've got Super Mario running now on Nintendo Switch with Excalibur.
Well, not quite. I've got things drawing, but I don't have anything.
You have squares moving around.
I have squares moving around. No audio, no textures.
That's like the first milestone for any type of game, is to get some squares moving around.
Yeah, I was working on loading in images today, so making progress, though. It's a lot of C code, so that's fun.
Sweet. Should we get into the news?
Let's get into the news.
All right. Well, big announcement from Biome, which is the alternative linter to ESLint. It's the Rust-based linter. Their V2 release, which is codenamed BioType, brings type-aware linting to TypeScript and JavaScript projects, which is really neat. And the main thing here is that while they're not the first library to bring type-aware linting rules, they are the first to not rely on the TypeScript compiler, which means that you can lint your project without necessarily installing the TypeScript package. It doesn't have to do a full build of your project in order to run the linting. So you may already be familiar with TypeScript ESLint. That does also support type-aware linting, but it requires a build to get the type info because it uses the official TypeScript compiler, and Biome V2 works without TSC. So if you're interested in writing Biome rules, they use Rust. And so I linked to the no floating promises rule because that is one of the rules that they showcase, because you can await a promise, and if you don't catch it, you can throw a lint error, and that's what the no floating promises rule does, and it needs types in order to figure that out. And then one other thing is that because it doesn't rely on TSC, you might be wondering, how the heck are they doing it? Eric, you saw something for how they actually implemented it.
Yeah. So they're doing their own type inference, which seems like it could be a bad idea. So they're doing their own type inference, which I wish them the best of luck, because I know a lot of people have attempted this. Now, perhaps they're doing something a lot simpler than being, compatible with TypeScript. Maybe they're doing a subset of TypeScript that is achievable to do. Do the standard ML style inference that they do in TypeScript, and maybe not as robust as TypeScript. I could see that working. But if they're trying to target type for type compatibility with TypeScript, I think that'll probably be a really daunting task.
Yeah, that would be hard. I think what's interesting is we've talked previously about Josh Goldberg's project Flint and his series on if I were to build a linter and what the architecture would look like. And we know that TypeScript ESLint uses TSC out of the box, which means that once it's compatible with TypeScript native, maybe that just becomes a non-issue. For the extra build time is will be so minimal that it won't be a big deal to use the official type inference. And maybe that'll be the same thing with Biome too. Maybe for now that's what they're doing, but in the future, maybe they'll use TypeScript native to speed it up and get everything one-to-one.
And if you're on the Biome team, we would love to talk to you about it.
Yeah, that would be cool to learn more about it. I know a lot of people like Biome. Yeah, it's obviously the Rust-based tooling and stuff is huge. So we've got Biome. Now we've got Oxlint from VoidZero. And then, of course, we have TypeScript ESLint and ESLint. So we've got multiple options for linting our TypeScript projects now, which is pretty cool. Next to linting, we've got testing. And there's been a whole bunch of testing releases this past week. We are now starting to see the changes to Node with type stripping and require ESM support now sort of making their waves throughout all the tooling ecosystem. So, for example, Mocha 11.7 is now going to be compatible with Node's require ESM and type stripping support. The only thing that Josh Goldberg pointed out, because he's one of the maintainers, is that there are some edge cases that were reported with 11.7. So they might have to revert it, but they're keeping it for now, and then they're hopefully going to do fast follow-up fixes for those. But this is really important because this was part of the Node roadmap to unflag type stripping in Node 22, and this was one of the last blockers. So, because Mocha is used quite a bit, so it's a very popular testing framework. So if this can make it through and they don't have to revert it and becomes, part of 11.8 or whatever the next hot fix releases are going to be, then we might see Node 22 unflagging type stripping, which would be pretty sweet. Next up, we've got Jest. So if you're in the React ecosystem, Jest is super popular. Their last release was in 2022. And now, as of this past week, Jest 30 has been released. And there's a laundry list of stuff in this release that we can't cover totally, but it's pretty huge. But again, we've got improved ECMAScript module support and TypeScript support. So now you can use native ESM with Jest. You can write your Jest config files in TypeScript. And if you use MTS and CTS files, they're natively supported without requiring any extra configuration. If you're using Node's native type stripping feature, it says that we no longer load the TypeScript transformer to strip types, leading to faster test runs. So that's huge. And then just like a Vitest added support for explicit resource management with the using keyword, similarly with Jest, you can now use the using keyword with Jest spies, and they automatically get cleaned up after the test run or after the test finishes. So that's pretty sweet too.
Yeah, one other cool thing that I saw was they added the sign-on.js fake timers, which brings advanced timers to next frame. So if you're doing like any kind of request animation frame stuff, you can use this to advance all of the pending request animation frame callbacks to the next frame boundary. So if you're doing any kind of stuff with that, like I am, this is super cool.
Yeah, that's really neat. And one of the contributors to the Jest release was Christoph Nakazawa, and he has a game called Athena Crisis, which he open sourced.
Yeah, you should check it out.
Yeah, fun fact.
And next up, we have Grafana K6 has released their 1.0, which is huge because this is a very powerful performance testing library from Grafana Labs. Definitely check it out if you need to do like performance testing. It's what I use at work to do performance testing. It makes it super easy. It's very much like kind of a Playwright style, Cypress style API for interacting with your different like endpoints and stuff that you need to performance test. But this comes with a few things with the 1.0. They have a semantic versioning guarantee now. They're going to follow Semver 2.0. They have a 2-year support guarantee, and they have a public API service that they'll support. Also, they have first-class TypeScript support.
Yay!
And you don't need to run like a build on it. So you can just do K6 run myscript.ts, and you don't have to worry about it, and you'll just get TypeScript types.
Yeah.
You can also add extensions into K6, so you can do all kinds of cool stuff with those extensions. Like, for example, they have an example using Faker. So, like, if you need to do, like, generate phony baloney data, you can do things like that. And then they have some, like, revamped, like terminal UI styled test summaries. So you can just get, like, some nice output while you're running your tests. And they give you a bunch of stats out of there for free. Like, you get average, min, max, P90, P95. That kind of thing. So you can be like, oh, my average was good, but my P95s really sucked. Maybe I need to still do some work.
Mm-hmm. That's sweet. I have not used K6 for my own work.
I'll put my stamp of approval on it because I've used it a lot. And we found stuff, like a lot of stuff. Like, oh, I found where I needed to add database indexes and stuff like that, behind the scenes because of this. So it's good stuff.
I bet you can find memory leaks and all sorts of performance issues.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
You can crash web servers all day long.
Yeah, don't do it on production.
Yeah. Don't do it on production unless everyone knows that you're about to do that and they agree.
Yeah. You don't want to make your PMs angry at you. Even more than they already are.
That's right. Next up, we got more WebGPU news. This last week, the Mozilla team posted their intent to ship WebGPU in Firefox 141, which is awesome because then that will mean all of the big major browsers will have WebGPU unflagged for desktop. And that release is right now scheduled for July 22nd. So that's pretty cool. So that's coming up real soon.
Nice.
So as soon as, Safari decided they were going to go do that with Safari 26, it kind of opened the floodgate. The downside is we still don't have any ETA for Linux. I did go back and reread the Safari 26, and it seems to indicate that iOS will be supported with WebGPU. So
okay.
I misunderstood that last time. I don't know if I said it, but it seems like Linux is the odd one out for all of the major browsers still, including Chrome and Firefox.
Well, good luck. Hopefully Linux users can get it pretty soon. Sweet. We've got just a minor release that we missed earlier in June, but it was for Astro 5.9. And really the highlight with that release is content security policy support. So if you've ever dealt with web security, you're probably familiar with this, but if you haven't, content security policy allows your browser to restrict the network requests that go out according to specific rules. And there are two ways to provide content security policies. One, you can use HTTP headers that include the rules, or you can include meta tags. And so it's kind of interesting. In this release, the Astro blog post goes through how it works with them, but because they needed to support both server-side and SPA applications, client-side applications, they chose to implement it through meta tags, and they just get generated for you automagically based on your configuration. So when you add pages and stuff like that, or you add resources, it just automatically generates the CSP policies for you. So that's pretty cool. That's a really nice feature for any Astro users. So hopefully you can take advantage of that. Just makes your web apps a bit more secure.
Also, we have a PSA for Deno users. You might have noticed that the Homebrew version Deno is behind all of the other versions. And this is because there's a bug in Rust that is linker related. So they have a workaround posted, and we'll post that workaround where you can get the latest version. But TLDR, there's a issue in upstream Rust that is preventing Deno from shipping on Homebrew.
Okay. I just use whatever the vanilla installer is because it's so easy to update. You don't need a version manager for it. You just do Deno upgrade or Deno update or whatever the command is to get the new version. So,
yeah. And I wonder if that would just work in this case.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. But you can look at the YouTube post to learn more about it and how to work around it. Cool. We've got some community highlights. So Joyee Cheung from the Node Technical Steering Committee recently gave a talk at the Web Engines Hackfest 2025 conference, and her talk was about bridging CommonJS and ESM in Node.js. And so this is kind of a really good topic because a lot of the history between CommonJS and ECMAScript modules has been interoperability, especially if you're building libraries and trying to deal with both of them. And so she goes into a lot of detail on how you can handle those now in Node.js. And I haven't watched the entire talk, but I assume because it's very recent, she goes into nodes require ESM support. So I think you should definitely give it a watch. And by the way, I just wanted to mention that if you look at all these talks from all these different conferences, you'll see that they get very little views because they're not designed to feed the YouTube algorithm, but you can watch things from amazing people just as if you were in the room. So one life pro tip is to replace doom scrolling with vibe surfing all these talks on YouTube. That's what I like to do sometimes, is just let the algorithm figure out based on some of the talks that I've watched what new talks are out there, which is, I think, pretty fun.
Yeah, and I'd say that this talk is pretty salient given the current releases in the libraries that we're seeing. Kind of this wash of support now for ESM, as now we can bridge the gap in Common and ESM that was kind of getting in our way.
Yes. Yep. We've got a blog post from Free Code Camp. If you don't have a background in computer science and maybe need to brush up on your data structures, there is a blog post on how queues work in TypeScript. And this is by Yazdun. And they cover all the different types of queue data structures. So linked lists, simple queue, circular queue, double-ended queue, and priority queue. So if you're not sure what any of those mean and what the differences are, you should definitely take a look at that post.
Got to get in the queue. Got to get in the queue so you can get in the queue, so you can get in the queue, so you can get to the holding tank to get into the queue.
That's right. And if we were in the UK, we would definitely understand how queues work.
That's right. Yeah. And sometimes you just get in queues because that's the thing to do. Anyway, we have Dr. Axel's Corner returning with 2 blog posts for this month. The first one, which I think is kind of a cautionary tale that you can apply to your own types, is how TypeScript solved its global iterator name clash. So in ECMAScript 2025, JavaScript gets a new class called iterator. Problem is, TypeScript already had an existing type for that. So this blog post goes through how they solved that and made it work, so without breaking everyone's code.
That's a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah. So TLDR, they kept the old iterator, which was the protocol for iteration, without the iterator helper methods. And now instances of an iterator are now a new type called iterator object. So roughly speaking, that's how they fixed it. So it just might be, if you're doing your own framework or something, it might be good to prefix your own types with something to avoid clashes with other types, because this could happen to your own types in your own projects, not just TypeScript, because as things evolve, as ECMAScript evolves, you want to be careful about the names you pick. The next one, which is very interesting, and is a callback to Kamran's library about doing type guards with gets with maps like and form datas and URL search params. So Axel has a great blog post on how to check mapped keys and array indices, and I recommend taking a look at this. There's a lot of nuance here when you want to narrow your types and make sure that you're getting at things in a type safe way. So like if you want to get at I want to get at the 0th element of an array, can I do that in a type safe way? Can I get at this key in a map in a type safe way? Very interesting stuff. A lot of examples in this blog post. I recommend checking it out.
Yeah, I was very honored to be linked to in the resources section of his post. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Next up is a blog post from Shopify Engineering from, I think his name is pronounced Yov Weiss, but it talks about their process getting import maps to be better.
Do you want to explain like M5 what is an import map?
Oh, sure. Import maps are kind of a neat little feature in modern JavaScript. If you're using like a module and you want to import like vanilla ESM modules. So like say I want to import thingy from, quotes, my library. What I would do is I would do a script type import map, and then I would be able to say these imports that I'm like these top level import names that I'm importing from, they come from this JavaScript file.
So this is something that is used in the browser and is useful for writing actual native modules in the browser. Would you get this with like a bundler?
Yeah. And honestly, like if you're using like a package JSON, like they also have a way of like adding an import map. Like
okay.
This. So it's same idea.
Cool.
So like if you do imports in your package JSON, it's the same kind of idea.
Cool.
Where you can do like redirection. So like consumers of your module can be like, I want to import this thing. And then you in your import map say, it points at this file.
Gotcha.
So it allows you to decouple the name of the file from the source code.
Nice.
Which is also awesome in like a production context, because you might have like a cache busting hash on it, and you don't want to have to make your consumers have to know the weird hash of your file to import it. So like that's also a nice thing. And then browsers do the right thing too. So like under the hood, the browser knows, oh, I don't need to reload this if the hash hasn't changed.
Okay, cool. That's really neat.
Import maps are awesome, but they kind of came with two big problems originally, and that's that no module was allowed to load before an import map was loaded. So that kind of sucks. And then also, this is from their post, import maps were like Highlanders. There could only be one in the past. So this kind of got in the way of like having a big distributed like micro front end system where you want to serve JavaScript, and maybe you want to have like hierarchical import maps. You want to have import maps for different bits of code. So they talk about the process of solving this issue. So part of it was standards work. So they worked with a lot of folks in the standards community to actually come up with a way to support multiple import maps. And then there's now a merge algorithm that allows multiple import maps to coexist. And so like if you get one import map and then it encounters another one, it knows how to make that work. And then on the other side of it, well, you're like, okay, well, that's great. Now we have these import maps supported in newer browsers, but what about older ones? And that's where Guy Bedford came in and whipped together the ES module shim, which also supports multiple import maps. So really interesting stuff. It's a great read about how they went about this and like, how they made this change to make the web better. Next up, we start to hear a little bit more about VoidZero's Vite Plus plans.
Ooh, Vite Plus, is that? Oh, that's going to be the premium pro subscription to Vite. Am I right?
That's the idea. At least as far as details are still a little vague, but we know we have this idea of Vite Plus. Kind of the tagline that we're hearing from Evan is that it's going to be like a quote unquote cargo for JavaScript. It's going to have, potentially it's going to be a drop-in replacement for Vite, and it's going to have potentially some AI integrations, some things like that you might want in an enterprise context, like you need policy enforcement, or you need to do workspace audits. There might be some GUI tools that are associated with it. One thing that they did headline, like they repeat, and it's worth repeating, is that everything that is currently open source will remain open source. So that's not a thing that'll change. So there's not going to be, they're being very clear that there's not going to be any kind of like rug pull with the existing open source. There's just going to be a new thing for like new stuff. So we're starting to see some ideas around what that new thing will be to support this, the business model.
That is really interesting. And I don't remember who I heard this from, but it was some interview with people who are working on some B2B SaaS. And they were talking about, what do you charge for? Like, what do you make people pay for? And the realization that this person came to was that we charge people for more control. You know what it was? I think it was for PenPot. I think the Figma alternative. It's an open source like Figma alternative called PenPot, and they have a premium version. But the premium version, it doesn't add new features necessarily. It adds more control. So what they were saying is that big companies like enterprises and stuff, they want more control over stuff. They don't want it to be so open. And I think it's the same with like Excalidraw, if you've used that before. So like if you upgrade, you get like a team plan, or you get auditing, or you get like, you can disable features for, different parts of your organization. It's like, it's a really interesting way of thinking about your pricing model, which is like everything in the base version is just more open. It's like, it's more free. You can do whatever you want. It's more flexible. And so people actually pay to restrict features, which is kind of a very interesting way to look at it. But that's kind of what this sounds like, is maybe what they're realizing, or their plan is to add these, like, if you want to restrict stuff and how you use the tool chain, then that's going to be a paid feature.
I can really see this coming into play like in a security context, because what better place to understand your security posture for like front end or back end apps is during the Vite build process. Vite has a purview over all of the things that it's assembling together for you. So that would be a great place to like maybe have premium security features for enterprises. You could probably even do like stuff like signature checking. So like maybe even novel threats, not just like reactionary stuff. Like you might be able to do like detection modes, like, malware detection. So like for things that are like 0 days or newly deployed malware that we don't know about yet, you might be able to catch it in like kind of an enterprise security product like this.
Yeah. Sounds cool.
I'm just guessing. I don't have any insider information. That was just a guess.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be really interesting to see how VoidZero evolves with that, because I think that is like an open question in the community. Is like, we love Vite, but we know that it needs to make money at some point, and so what's the plan for that? But I feel like that is a pretty nice way to do it if that's what they're going to do. What else you got?
Well, Slack posted on Blue Sky recently that they are using TSGO already in their CI to do their type check.
Nice.
And it saves them 5 whole minutes per run, which is huge. Like, can you imagine waiting 5 minutes for a type check?
Well, I wait 20 minutes for my current app to build because it's so old. So,
that sucks.
That would be a huge improvement if it ran in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that'd be a huge improvement. So it saves them 5 minutes. And time varies based on how many node modules need updating, but just running their type check used to take over 6 minutes. So the TSGO, according to them, takes 42 seconds, give or take, which is a wild improvement, which is pretty cool.
Very nice. We've got a cool community project. It's been around for a while. It's created by Evo Plaza, and they have an overview thread on Blue Sky, but it's for how to write WebGPU code in a type-safe way. And you actually write WebGPU shaders in TypeScript. So this is pretty sweet. And if you're not using WebGPU, you're probably like, what? I don't know what that really means. And I'm sure Eric can explain it better than I can. But in order to write shaders for these graphic programming languages, like we've talked about WebGL before, and then on desktop you have like OpenGL, and those use like a shader language, and those run on the GPU. And WebGPU did a thing where they created their own separate shader language. And so you've always been restricted for like, if I want to write a shader, I need to learn this other language and I need to write it for the GPU. But what TypeGPU does is it allows you to write these shaders in TypeScript using types, and then it compiles it or transforms it into the correct WebGPU shader language. And so you can't use it for WebGL and like OpenGL development on the web, but you can use it if you're using WebGPU. And we just talked about how WebGPU is going to be coming to all the modern browsers pretty soon and almost all the platforms, hopefully Linux soon, which means that we're probably going to see a proliferation of WebGPU. It's already used by Three.js and TensorFlow. And so in the overview thread, Evo kind of explains what the limitation is and how to interop with these like two libraries by writing TypeGPU code. So anyway, that was kind of a cool library that is, related to some of the game dev and graphics stuff that we sometimes talk about.
Yeah, this is pretty cool stuff. Like they have in the Blue Sky post, they have an example of like what the type GPU code looks like. It's very terse, very compact. And then what it like evaluates to it, like it produces the WGSL, the WebGPU shader language, WGSL. It produces the WGSL and it produces all of the required like, boilerplate in WebGPU on the left. It's very interesting stuff, and you can kind of see where the utility here would be like super high.
Yeah, and Evo has a talk on YouTube that they gave called The Road to Type Safety on the GPU. So if you want some more information, you can check that out. And Eric, you did a stream about WebGPU as well.
I did. So if you were like, oh, I've been kind of waiting on this WebGPU thing, definitely check out a stream I did where I straight up, without knowing anything about WebGPU, I decided to go and learn it about 2 years ago.
Nice.
I just learned it from scratch by reading the documentation and just kind of muddling my way through it. So you can also learn with me if you would like. But if that's not your cup of tea and you just want to know the facts, maybe watch something else. But it's a stream I did learning WebGPU. What I will say is WebGPU is really awesome in that it gives you like the output of one command feeds into the next. So it solves this problem that OpenGL and WebGL have where you don't know what sequence of commands you need to call. And it's very unclear unless you read the documentation or you're like a veteran and you just know that these commands need to be called before these other ones because it's just like this, it's a black box state machine, API. Versus WebGPU, which is like, oh, this command produces this result. I feed this result into this next command. And then you get a lot of help from the type system in TypeScript. And you also get a lot of help from WebGPU's own error messages. Like they're fantastic. Like it's night and day compared to like WebGL. Like WebGL, you just have a black screen and you're like, I don't know why it's not working. And then you just have to stare at your code until something hits you.
The black screen of death.
Exactly. Graphics programmers unite and you're like, it is not working and nothing is drawing. I guess I'm just going to stare into the abyss until I figure it out.
Yep. Oh, man. All right. We are going to close this community highlight segment on a bit of a sad note. You may have heard in the Node.js community, one of the original core contributors and steering committee members, Michael Rogers, has passed away, and that everyone in the community has been really supportive and has tried to think of what we can do to help preserve his legacy. And so I was just going to quote from the Node.js official account. They said, "We're heartbroken by the loss of Michael Rogers, a key figure in the Node.js ecosystem and a force behind what makes the community what it is. To help preserve his legacy, we've opened a GitHub repo for stories, photos, and memories." And so we will link to that. So if you have a specific memory of Michael Rogers, then you can contribute that to the GitHub repo. We'll also link to a Linux Foundation post in memory of Michael Rogers. There is also a link to some of the organizations you can send donations to in his name, and then a link to his obituary. So we're really sad to hear that, and hopefully there's a way to keep his legacy alive, because Node.js is what it is because of his work when he originally forked IO Node.js way back when, and then reintegrated it and created the foundation to steer Node.js. And then there's a bunch of other foundations that have now used the same governance model that he created to run their projects. So like a huge impact to the ecosystem.
Yeah, he was pivotal in making Node.js what it is today. So it's truly a huge loss.
Yep. So please go lend your support and go check out that GitHub repo.
All right. We have some cool links. This one kind of stuck by me, and probably everyone else is like, oh, yeah, I know about this one, but it's Promise.try. And the thing is, it does something that I didn't think it did. I thought it was doing some try-catch maneuver, but it's actually a little more interesting than that. It's like, well, what if you have a function that might give you a promise? Well, you don't want to have to schedule that on your microtask queue. You want to just, like, if it doesn't give you a promise, you just want to execute it synchronously. Well, that's what Promise.try will do. And you don't have to do any shenanigans to try and detect if what you're calling is asynchronous or not. So what'll happen is you can do Promise.try, pass it a func, and it'll call it synchronously. And if it's synchronous, it'll just call it synchronously. It'll just return the value. But if it's a promise, it'll do the thing that normal promise things need to do, which is pretty cool.
It'll schedule it on the microtask queue.
Ooh, yes, the microtask queue.
If you have not heard of the microtask queue, then, count yourself lucky because you haven't gotten that low level. But it's definitely something that you think about when you're trying to write super high performance JavaScript apps.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be super useful for like library developers like myself, where you're wanting to take something, and it could be anything, like any kind of function, but you don't want to necessarily force everyone into like an async workflow if they're sync. For example, we have like an on-init method. Well, I don't want to force it to be async if it doesn't have to be. I can just call it synchronously if that's all that's going on.
Nice. I've got a couple cool links. I read a blog post. One of my favorite blogs that I get delivered to my inbox is Raptitude. And David writes, his writing, I really enjoy his writing style and like what he writes about. It's very sort of like philosophical. But he recently posted a blog post titled The Dying Art We All Depend On. And it's about the art of small talk and how it's dying, and yet it's so important for our interactions with each other. And one of the things that I think struck me when he was writing about it is that he was saying for himself how he always kind of despised small talk of like, why do I need, like, I don't care about this. Why do I need to do it? And then his mindset changed when he learned from someone else that he references that small talk is about making the other person at ease and making them more comfortable. And then once he realized that, maybe I do need to get better at this. It is a skill that we can learn. And it's a dying skill because people are staring at their phones all day and they don't interact with people. And if you've ever gone to a retail store and the person doesn't talk to you, you're on the other end of like what it's like to not feel comfortable talking to people. So anyway, it's a really interesting post, but he has some takeaways for like what we can do to get better at that. And then in the Excalibur Discord, we have a TypeScript FM channel in there. Matt Jennings posted a video with Rich Harris, which I think is part of the Svelte documentary. It's like a clip from it, but it's the story of Rollup. And so with kind of all the things that we've been talking about with like, VoidZero and roll down and switching over things to Rust, you might be interested in like how Rollup came to be and what that journey was like. So Rich kind of goes into some of the details there. It's only like a 3-minute video, but it's pretty neat. Cool. I think that's a show.
I think that's a show.
All right. We'll see y'all later.
See you next time. Bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to TypeScript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at comronicus.com and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at TypeScript.fm.